circle too. Therefore, the meeting comes to order, please. As chairman of the select board due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the board is meeting electronically utilizing a Zoom platform. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided in the Town of Lee's website at lee.newhampshire.org. If anybody has a problem with access, please call 603-659-5414. Please note that all votes that are taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Mr. Bugby.
I'm here and I'm alone.
Mr. Brown.
I'm here and I'm alone.
Mr. LaCourse, I am here and I am alone. First order of business is a public hearing associated with the budget. I thought maybe the town administrator can just give us a very cursory summary of the proposed budget, then we'll open the floor for any comments.
Sure. So the proposed budget, as it stands, is about 6.5% higher than the current fiscal year. That's due primarily to a few things. One, the department head budget proposes a new full-time police officer and a new full-time children's librarian. The health insurance premiums increased fairly significantly this year, and the retirement system increased significantly for fiscal 22. In addition, what was added to the ABC budget was a full-time firefighter. Most, if not all, of the other budgets remained essentially static.
Okay, thank you. At this point, since it is a hearing, the chair will take any comments. Any comment from the board first, then I'll open it up to the floor. Mr. Bugby?
I have no comments at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
No, I'm fine.
Thank you. All right, the floor is open. Julie, could you identify people, then allow them in?
Yeah, the only person who already isn't a panelist is Pat Barber, and she can speak if she wishes to.
Okay.
I do have a statement I'd like to make.
Please.
Pat Barber, 140 Wednesday Hill Road. I'm a member of the ABC, but the views I'm expressing this evening are my own and I don't represent the committee.
Still there?
Yep, she should be able to see video now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The budget as recommended by the ABC includes positions for a new police officer and a new firefighter, and I'd like to speak in support of those two positions. The most important role of our town government is ensuring the safety of our community. Chiefs Dronsfeld and Nemeth work diligently to provide Lee with the professional responsiveness we deserve. Both face mounting challenges in their efforts to keep us safe. It is our responsibility to ensure they have adequate resources to do their jobs. Today, the police department has 8 full-time and 1 half-time positions. Data from sources such as the FBI estimates we should have between 10 and 14 full-time positions for a community our size. And I should note that that does not include the summer visitors that we get or the summer homes that we have. Calls for service increase every year. More troubling is the increase in felonies. These calls take substantially more time to process than a less complicated incident such as a traffic stop, taking officers involved away from other duties. There are still portions of the 24-hour day when limited staffing leaves a responding officer alone. This is an unacceptable safety risk. Please support our police by funding the additional position. Now I'd like to comment on the additional firefighter. The days of an all-volunteer firefighter force are gone. Chief Nemeth faces a shrinking pool of volunteers, and turnover among his paid firefighters. Staffing shifts, particularly on nights and weekends, is becoming increasingly difficult. The chief is proposing moving to a model where he has 24-hour shifts for his firefighters. This is an approach that has been used by other departments, both large and small. It's attractive to potential employees, improves recruitment and retention of firefighters, and provides more flexible staffing options. The additional full-time position that is included in the budget would allow Chief Nemeth to move to the new staffing model. And I ask you to add this fire position to strengthen our fire department. I often hear comments like, this isn't the year to add a position. The middle school's going to drive up our taxes. Please do not starve our town resources. We're going to be dealing with the budget impact of the new middle school for many years to come. The town cannot stand still while we're paying for the school. The right time to add positions is when you need them. I strongly support keeping these two positions in the budget so that the police and the fire departments can continue to keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any other comments? Is the board ready to make any decisions at this time? Or do they want to say anything at this time?
Not at the moment, unless we want to talk about each individual department, if we want to do that at this particular time.
We could, that's what I'm asking, if we'd like to go through it section by section. Mr. Brown, are you interested?
I'm fine with it.
Fine with
I
going,
don't have anything, it's real, I fully support the statement that Pat just made. And let's move on.
Mhm. So I suggest at this point, why don't we go through it section by section?
Okay.
And Julie, could you run it section by section for us?
Sure. So the Board of Selectmen budget, there's no recommended change from the current fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
Elections and registrations is actually decreasing. I think that's because there are fewer elections in fiscal 22.
And excuse me, Town Administrator, so if either the selectmen have a comment or something at this point, please ring out as we go through these section by section. If none is made, I assume everything is fine at this time. Doesn't mean, I know that's a second hearing. We can always have an option to discuss it again. Please go forward.
Sure. So the town clerk tax collector, there's a slight increase in the deputy wages. That reflects the fact that in March of the previous fiscal year, that individual became a full-time employee, splitting duties between the finance office and the town clerk tax collector, and there was a subsequent increase in salary. So that's what's driving that increase. Financial administration, again, the increase reflects the increased wages for the new full-time individual. Financial administration, there are some slight increases and more decreases in the IT budget, mostly because we're being told that we need a new server. That's what's driving that $4,000 increase. Assessing, there's just a slight increase or anticipated increase as we move into another fiscal year with the contract. Legal expenses, we are recommending that we keep them the same. I'm not aware of anything that should drive that higher. And then of course it could be lower, but one never knows. Personnel is where we're seeing a number of changes and increases. Again, as I mentioned, that's as a result of the full-time police officer and the increases in the health insurance and the retirement system. Any questions on that?
Julie, could you just go through for people's edification, the rates that those retirement expenses went up? The portion to the towns?
Shoot, for some reason, I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
I believe that the group one, which
Okay.
are your basic municipal employees, such as the employees in town hall, I think that went up almost 26%. And the police and fire rates increased, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 or 10%. So
Okay.
that's and the police and fire rates, as you know, are already 30% of the wages. So that's
Okay.
a pretty significant number.
And can you speak to us a little bit? Workers' comp went down because we didn't have any incidents, or why is that down 6,000?
It must be because we haven't had that many, we actually haven't had very many incidents. We have very few lost time incidents. And if
Okay.
any of you are familiar with workers' comp, having a number of lost time incidences can really increase your rates.
Thank you.
Yeah. Planning and zoning is, the department head is actually recommending a slight decrease. Government buildings, there's the increase in there because of the anticipated costs for the daily building. So there are some of the lease payments, not all, as we've discussed in the past. And then utility costs that are in the government buildings budget. Again, those are, other than the lease payment, which we do know, those are educated guesses. The cost, almost all of the costs of the renovations made to the building and 12 months lease payments are coming out of the unassigned fund balance.
So the 50,000, that's for 10 months, 5,000 a month. Why is that 10 months and not 6?
Well, it's not 10 months. It's actually less than that because we
okay.
kept pushing the lease out.
Right?
So it's lease payments and it includes the utilities for that building.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank
As you
you.
may recall, we reduced, not eliminated utility costs for the town hall and the annex. We can't cut those buildings off completely. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, Julie, I can't page down on this because I'm sharing your screen. So if you could.
yeah, no, you can't do that. I can only do that.
Right.
Sorry, I started reading off of my paper copy.
Okay.
Cemetery.
Is not proposing there to be any changes. Property and liability insurance, the rate that you're seeing there is the guaranteed maximum rate. The actual rate may be less than that. The police department budget, of course, is proposing an increase due to the new full-time police officer, although I think the police chief, and he can certainly speak to this, recommended cutting a part-time officer in part to make up for that. In addition, the ABC's budget proposed cutting out the cruiser, which you see in the last line, the police new equipment line, as a way to reduce the fiscal 22 budget.
While we're here at this point, I know Tom's online. Normally, we just rotate cars out, was it every 6 years, somewhere along the line? How are you going to handle this fact that you're going to have an oldie somewhere?
Well, we've been fortunate. I took one of the later model cruisers offline some time ago and put it as a backup car for details. So, and for 2020, Dodge didn't make a cruiser. They were redesigning it. So they actually, I didn't order that car until October, and it's not scheduled to be here till sometime in January. By the time it's on the road, set up is February. So I'm looking at that as our 2021 car. And, we take good care of the cars. The cars are much better built. It's not an ideal situation, but for me, it's a good trade-off, and it's something we can work with if it helps us get the officer.
Another question, the special duty fund, is there funds in that?
I'm sure there are. The guys have been working a lot of details.
Julie, you have any idea?
I don't know how much is in there, although I do think it's fairly significant.
I'm just thinking, just in case, if cruises are needed, I guess you could tap that fund, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So there's a backup just in case something fails somewhere. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Oh.
Anybody? Go
Don't
ahead.
go away, Chief.
I'm here.
Chief, you just heard what Barbara had to say about the additional officer in your department. Can you give us your opinion in terms of that particular addition to your staff? She went through some different metrics in terms of her support of that particular addition, but can you give us any additional information from your point of view?
Well, Pat obviously did her homework. I thank her for that. I have used those numbers in the past, the FBI statistics, officers per your population. I can say, and the numbers that I have provided, I can say straight-faced that we need another officer. How I would have never thought we'd be as busy as we are, and that the severity of the calls we're handling would be what they are right now. And as Pat stated, the more severe the call, the more time the officer is tied up on that call. And then you've got court, the more arrests you have, the more investigations you have, the more court time you have, pulls the officer away. And right now we're struggling to cover everything. We've got one officer who's been dedicated to the guard. Now I just found out the earliest that officer will be back is towards the end of March. Another officer out, and we have people using personal time that they held on till to the end of the year. So I've been working some parts of the evening shifts. I worked the Saturday after Christmas day shift to help fill in the blanks. I don't mind doing it, but we should have the people to cover it.
Chief, don't go away. Another thing I got from the chief, I got the call records for the last 5 years. And the thing that stands out for me, and I think Pat mentioned this as well, but the felonies in the last year are up 36.1%, and that's significant. As Pat said, felonies take forever, more than like a traffic stop. So, and I'm not sure what's causing all these particular felonies, maybe COVID, I don't know. But it seems like we need some more support there in terms of handling those particular felonies. So I don't know, Chief, if you can speak to that. I don't know if you can tell us the nature of those additional felonies and what you're seeing out there.
We're seeing a lot more drug activity. We've got a younger crew. They're very active out on the roads, a lot of traffic, a lot of traffic violations that are leading to a lot of these felony drug arrests. We're very proactive in our patrol, so we're actually disrupting crimes as they're happening. We had one where an officer interrupted a car break-in at about 3:30 in the morning. We had to call, I came in, we had to call some other people in because the subject took off into the woods. We eventually located him, arrested him. We found his car out in the woods, towed that. Now you have a search warrant. Typing a search warrant, getting the judge to sign it, and then effecting that search warrant on the car is about 3 hours worth of time. Now you're going to search the car. This particular car had 231 pieces of stolen property in it. From 2 different states, 14 different agencies. So now all of them have to be contacted. So it really snowballs. And that one call we're still working on it. We're still dealing with the county attorney on the case. Now you've got an informant who wants to come in because they have information, and it just keeps morphing from there. Since I submitted my budget presentation, we've had 11 more arrests. We just had another domestic violence arrest the other night involving a handgun. It's not slowing down.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Anything else for the police department? Okay, please move on.
Dispatch, both of those budgets have increased due to requests from both agencies. The fire department, just please make sure you understand that when the department head presented his budget, he did not include a new full-time firefighter. So you will not see those costs in the department head budget, but they are reflected in the ABC's proposed budget. So it's actually a much greater increase if you do go with the new firefighter than the 3,229 that you see in this budget.
Julie, what's that number right after the ambulance in the
Oh,
ABC column?
that must have been in there. My apologies. That must have been in there when I was doing some calculations and I forgot to take it out. Just ignore it. It doesn't change the totals.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, when you talk about this, it's more money because we don't see it here. It's also more with respect to retirement that we're not seeing as well. And other
Correct. So these are the costs or the approximate cost for the new firefighter. Again, as always, depending on the exact medical plan that the person starts with, will affect that cost. But as you can see, on a $41,500 wage, the retirement system cost is almost $14,000.
Fire chief there?
Yep, I'm here.
You're there. So ABC recommended it. You didn't. Why?
We were asked to put in a flat budget. That's what I did. But like last year, I spent most of my time discussing with the board and the ABC our roster situation and how we've been dealing with that. It's something I fully support. It's something that we've been talking about for a couple of years now. I've been working with the board promoting this, and so that's just how I handled the budget this year.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Can we ask the chief? Chief, one of the things that you told the ABC and the board in terms of the issues you're having in terms of staffing and how this 24-hour model, if you get this new position, this 24-hour model would assist you in helping to retain staff and also to schedule staff. Could you speak a little bit to that, Chief?
So currently right now, the full-timers work with a part-timer on shift, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then we have the nighttime coverage for most of the week. And then last year with the new full-time position, we added coverage on Friday night and Saturday night. Like we've been talking about our roster, we have 18 people on the department currently. 13 of them live out of town. Some of that has been because of the nighttime coverage. It's easier to get people onto the department from outside our community because they can stay at the station and work those shifts that they want to. So we've had coverage that way, but we're lacking with our roster on the people that handle some of those shifts. So one way to help that is with this part-time position, the part-time position, or the full-time position, sorry, will work the 24-hour shifts. And that's what a lot of the other full-time departments and combination departments do right currently is they do the 24-hour rotation. By doing that, we have one full-timer on 7 days a week. And currently we don't have that. Sorry, we have a call going on right now that I'm listening to. So 7 days a week, we'll have that full-timer here. And another thing that's been, we've been struggling with is our officers. Currently, there's myself and an assistant chief, deputy chief that's not around as much. the lieutenant who just took on a full-time position. Today's his last shift. And then we have a crew chief as well. The future of these positions, I'm hoping, is lieutenant's positions. That will give me and the assistant chief a little bit of a break. You know, we communicate all the time to see who's around, who's going to be in town, you know, plans for the weekends, things like that. So one of us is always around. You know, and the way COVID's gone this year and everything else, it's been just a struggle for me and him to be available all the time, and get no breaks and no vacations and no time off. So we're hoping that in the future, those positions becomes lieutenants and it kind of takes some of that off of us. You know, the last couple of people that have left this department, the part-timers and full-timers have all said that they're looking for the 24-hour shifts so that they come in and work those shifts. You know, that's why they're leaving and going to these other departments, but it'll also help the department where we'll have the 24/7 coverage. The nighttime won't change. There'll be the one full-timer on at night, and then we'll keep the nighttime coverage. So currently we only have 2 people. What we're seeing right now is we always try to have a firefighter EMT, 2 of them on for those slots. And lately it's been 1 EMT and 1 firefighter. They're not duly certified. This year with COVID, the certification, the classes have taken a big hit. So people haven't been able to jump into classes to get those extra certifications. So we're just seeing a lot of single certified people that are covering those shifts. But to have the full-timer on with them, it'll just give us another person that has both fire and EMS certs.
Chief, can you also speak to one of the other things that Pat Barber mentioned as well, that you mentioned to us, is in terms of the whole nature of your particular service? There was times when there were people in the town of Lee that they worked in Lee, the call came in, they responded. That's not the model you're seeing these particular days. Can you speak to that and how the nature of who's volunteering for you or the lack of volunteers that you're seeing?
Yeah, in my presentation that I gave the board and the ABC, I had, you know, some smiley faces on the screen to show the roster that we had when I joined in 1998. We had 40 people in the department back then, and most of those people, there were 7 families that there was 2 or more. So we had multiple families with a father-son or 2 brothers that were on the department. A lot of them worked in town, and we're not seeing that anymore. Like I said, we have 18 people that are on the department and 13 of them don't live in town. At that time, 22 years ago, we had 150 calls, I think it was, and now we're up into the range of 700. So we're doing more calls with less people. The volunteers are just that busy, you know, with their full-time jobs that they can't come in during the daytime like they used to. And then, you know, we're seeing the transition with a lot of the newer people, you know, that have families. They're helping out and volunteering in other ways, and they're helping out with the schools, or they're helping out with their kids' sports teams or whatever else. And they're not spending time working at a fire department. I mean, on top of the calls, just to do our training, it's 216 hours, I think, for your Fire 1 class, and it's just about the same for your EMT, and we're asking them to get Fire 1, Fire 2, and your EMT. So it's just to get the training is a 2-year commitment to do that, and then, you know, try and serve the town and come in for calls.
Thank you, Chief.
Anything else from fire? Thank you. Let's move on, Julie.
Building inspector, there's no proposed change. Same with emergency management. The highway budget is essentially flat. Some minor adjustments within the budget, but the overall change is 0. Same with the transfer station. There really aren't any major increases proposed, with the exception of hauling costs, which have gone up, and solid waste disposal. Animal control, we're changing that, reducing it just to reflect the fact that we very rarely spend money in that line. Lamprey Healthcare did not submit a request this year because they are no longer in the senior transportation business, and Oyster River Oyster River Woman Aid is a new request for us this year. They've reduced the general assistance budget just to kind of finally reflect the fact that we don't often spend money for electricity, heating, fuel, medical supplies, food assistance. I'm hoping that those things don't go up, even though obviously there's a lot of people still in very dire straits as a result of the pandemic. Oyster River Youth Association, as you recall, they put in for what they believe an amount to cover their administration costs for the town of Lee. The ABC recommended cutting that to $15,000. The Fair Committee said that they would not need any funding because we're going to use the funding from the current year if we are able to have fireworks in the fall. And then the library was looking to increase the hours for the children's librarian to make it a full-time position. And then obviously there are a number of costs associated with that. The ABC proposed cutting their operating budget to make up for that. Conservation Commission is asking for $7,000 this year, where they have not asked for funds in the past few years. The bond principal, of course, stays the same. Bond interest goes down slightly.
Can we go back to the library? Somebody from the library there? Can you speak?
Yes, I'm
Is
here.
that cut, please?
Yes, our operating budget is the only line item you get to see other than salaries and benefits and such. That 45,000 that we use, about half of that is our book budget. The other half goes towards the actual operations of the library. We spend around, let me pull up my little cheat sheet here. Yeah, about 20,000 is our book budget that covers all the materials that we loan out, including DVDs and ebooks, audiobooks, our membership into the New Hampshire database for downloadable materials. We spend about $1,500 a year for our actual computer system that runs the circulation system that we use. That's all part of that. We have electricity, copier expenses, maintenance. We also pay for some programming. We do get some assistance from the Friends of the Library who donate money to our programs. So we're not funding the entire base of programs. We just supplement that. And this year we're in the process of getting higher speed internet access. We've been using a free internet access from Comcast that they do because the town has a contract. They give libraries free internet access. Unfortunately, it's the slowest of the slow. And when COVID hit and we started doing our children's programming online 100%, we found there were major issues with trying to upload recorded story times, just trying to get any kind of a streaming system running, trying to run a virtual book group from within the library. Having a staff member in the library was pretty much impossible with the speed that we have on our internet access. So we're in negotiation right now to get a higher speed internet access, and that's actually going to increase our budget by $100 a month. So I'm sorry, $150 a month. So we're really looking at going to need another $1,800 on top of that to run our virtual programs. In terms of having a full-time children's librarian, we had an opportunity right after COVID hit that one of my staff members felt that they weren't going to continue working. And so we had an opportunity to move some of the hours around within the library, and having our children's librarian as full-time, where she's already working 4 days a week, had her 5 days a week. It actually would help. We've seen a fantastic increase in the amount of usage of the library. It takes a lot more work to prepare for and deliver virtual programs. Kudos to our children's librarian for jumping right in and grabbing it with both hands and started doing virtual programming right away within the week of COVID shutdown. So this gave us an opportunity to really look at the schedule and see what would really work best for us. We have 2 full-time. If we had a 3rd full-time person, then you would always have 2 people in the building plus another person, and that would be me as the administrator. So for every hour, that's the best model we have. And we had that when we had our other employee, but when they decided not to continue, then that was an 8-hour shift that was available for use for filling in. So we thought this was a perfect time. We have seen a dramatic increase, like I said, of attendance in our virtual programs, and we're providing crafts and other things. We're doing curbside pickup, and we have a number of families that really do rely on each week being able to come and get some more books for their kids, especially now that the schools are fully remote. So that was our idea.
Thank you. Any questions from the library? Or any other comments, please?
One of the things in the ABC recommended a budget, a total of 250,000. So I'm not sure how the 237 plays into that, but the ABC recommended $250,000. And their tact was, we only really see the last line item, the library trustees, the 45.7 that they said. So they control their hiring and firing. So what we said is we're not really supportive of the increased hours and giving benefits to that 3rd position. So if they want to do that, that's fine, but we only want to fund the regular operating budget at that level. So, but it was $250,000. So I'm not sure what the 237 is, but
The changes, there were 2 corrections that needed to be made to the
okay.
the library budget. One was that you had the initial higher number for the ancillary payroll expenses. I think it was
Okay.
78,000.
Okay.
And Ruth submitted a correction to that.
Okay.
And then the other is, I believe that the ABC still had that miscellaneous to be offset by revenue number
Okay.
in the budget, which the auditors have told us is not necessary.
Okay. All right. So that must make up the difference of the 13.
Let's see, that would have been 8. That would have been 8 and 6. Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's the difference. So the
Yeah,
ABC was in support of the library. We're not saying no library, but we're just saying we're not in favor of that particular position, increasing hours and also going to a benefit position. And that's something that the ABC had to struggle with, just like the 2 positions, the fire department and police. So that's, and I'm not speaking for the ABC, but that's just the conversation that was happening and the decision process they went through.
Right. So I guess to that end, when I made my presentation to the board and to the ABC and the select board, I did state upfront that I have the monies for salary, and what I'm looking for is the increase for the benefits portion. The other thing that's included in here is anticipated half year of medical benefits for a new library director, because I will be leaving halfway through next year. It's like, forewarned, we like to plan for these things, so that is in there. So even if we eliminated a full-time, kept my children's librarian at 34 hours, which is not full-time yet.
Mm-hmm.
For the library, they have to be 35 hours. So there would still be an additional cost for benefits because there will be a new director coming in next December. But I would, it's true. All you have to play with on your end is just my operating budget, that 45,700. I would propose that it become a 46,800. That would give us a $2,000 increase in order to cover the increased internet expense, the higher broadband cost. But it's my recommendation that my children's librarian become full-time.
Okay, I understand.
Thank you. Any other comments for the librarian?
Can I say something? I've risen my hand, but I don't know if anybody saw that.
No, I have not seen a hand, but no, go ahead.
That's me. I just want, I mean, as part of the ABC, I think that we were under the impression the library kind of, the numbers were kind of, the library puts them how they see fit, but we did think that we didn't want to cut their budget. So this 237 that reflects the changes that Julie mentioned, I think most of the ABC would agree that we still would want to give them the 250 and that could be redistributed in some way. We certainly don't want to give them less money than they had last year.
Thank you. Any other comments or hands? I'm not seeing.
I would agree with Rebecca.
Okay. Julie, did you cover it all?
Yeah, we reached the end of the operating budget.
And the operator guesstimate of what the increase in the operating budget, if all of these things came true?
I think it would be somewhere between 6.5% and 7%.
Mhm. And just to try to get full coverage on this, Mr. Bugby, you sit with the Oyster River School Board, don't you?
What does that mean, John? I sit with them. What does that mean?
I'm trying to get some information of what the proposed increase is in their operating budget.
All right. I actually did.
I'm looking for numbers.
I actually, and it's something I shared with the board already. So if that's what you're talking about, I can speak to it if you'd like.
Please.
I did have a conversation with the superintendent. He made sure that I was sitting down at the time. He shared a piece of paper with me. Based on the current assessed value for the town of Lee and the information he knows from the state and from the school district, the tax rate for the town of Lee for the school in next year, when we set the budget in the fall of 2021, is going up 9.35%. To the town of Lee, that is a $2.07 increase. So anybody need a defibrillator, please call the chief and he can help you out, I suppose. But that is significant, and it's going to go down a little bit because he's using the current assessed value because he doesn't know what next year's assessed value is. And we have guesses. It's usually, $5-6 million. But that is significant. And that's something that I also shared with the ABC, so they know that. So it's going to be a significant increase. So it's not good. And just to let you know, there's a couple of things happening. One is the state is giving the town of Lee $508,000 less for that particular year. So that's a big hit. The other thing that's more disconcerting, at least for me, is the school board has determined they're using $500,000 out of their unassigned fund balance to fund this. So that's 9.35% using $500,000 out of their unassigned fund balance. So the year afterwards, that $500,000 is not going to be there. So it's going to go up even more. So that is the part that's disconcerting to me. So that's the bad news. And just for information, that other towns, Madbury's losing $263,000. Their rate's going up 8.13%. And Durham doesn't get that much in terms of subsidy from the state for funding for education. Their rate is only going up a little under 2%, 1.98%.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, do you know why there's such a variation in what the towns are losing from the state? Is that because they're cutting their support across the board and we just got more to begin with?
Well, we got an awful lot last year,
Good.
but it's based on the state formula. So we got a big hit last year in terms of a big increase, excuse me, not a hit. So that's part of it. So it's the state funding that's doing part of this particular increase that we're seeing. So, and just to let you know, this particular budget that we're talking about, the 2022 budget, that has, for the middle school, that has one interest payment for the bond for the middle school and one principal payment. So the year afterwards, we're going to get 2 principal payments and 2 interest payments. So that's even a larger hit. So
Wow, you put that in perspective, Scott. Thank you very much.
So sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I think everybody needs to know what's coming down the pike. So
Exactly. I think it's important that we get full disclosure and transparency and everything. The other aspect is Linda there at all?
she was.
Yeah, she was. I'm looking with respect to, you know, how things are coming, revenue with respect to the town.
Linda sent a report out today.
Mhm.
I think it was for the first 12 days of collection.
Okay.
We're running higher than we did the previous year. In other words, we are collecting our money faster. than
Well,
we
that's
did a
positive.
year ago. So we're hoping that trend continues.
Let's hope that it maintains and it does continue at this time, that's for sure. Anything else associated with the budget this time? I'm not ready to make a formal decision on some of these.
Do we want to go through the warrants and the trust funds?
I
That's
do
the-
have a question if I could.
Please.
Since you're not going to make any decisions this evening about the library budget, would I be willing to submit a revised budget if you chose not to make my children's librarian full-time, that I could submit a budget that would level fund those and still anticipate the increased cost for the new director?
Well, since we're in the first run of the budget hearing at this point,
Shall I wait?
well, no, actually, at this point, I was going to seek advice from the town administrator and then the other 2 select people. What do you say, Julie?
I mean, if the library wants to send us additional information, I mean, I think the board can certainly look at that and consider it when you're deciding what to do with the budget.
Mr. Bugby, you okay on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely okay with that. I would hope that the library trustees weigh in because, you know, they're the ones that are in charge of their salary budget. So
Exactly.
they're okay with it. I'm okay with it.
I am fine, Mr. Brown.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, I guess
just-
you can move forward on that. Thank you very much. All right, shall we go forth and look at some of the, town warrant at this point? Julie, you want to
Sure.
put that up?
Yep. So first article this year is the operating budget, which obviously we don't know what that is yet. Karen can confirm this, but I don't believe there are any proposed zoning ordinance changes this year.
There are not.
Okay. The next article came from the fire chief. They are looking to
Julie,
purchase.
can I stop you? You
Sure.
know what the default budget is, don't you, or not?
Sorry, yes, the default budget is almost the same as this year's, with the exception of the bond interest that gets reduced. So the default budget is $4,133,504.
Thank you.
Actually, don't quote me on that. I need to talk to DRA about something.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's approximately that amount.
Yeah, it's approximately that.
Okay, thank you.
So Article 3 came from the fire chief. They are proposing to purchase a new fire engine and to take it from the Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. $650,000.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the gross amount, correct? This doesn't include the trade-in.
I
Correct.
think
Correct.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Article 4 again came from the fire chief and the CIP. They are proposing to deposit $175,000 into the Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, which is the same as what was done past couple years. Article 5 is 20,000 to be deposited into fire ponds and cisterns, capital reserve fund. Article 6 came from the library trustees. They are requesting that $100,000 be withdrawn from the library capital reserve fund for the renovation and addition to the library. They also submitted Article 7, which is to raise and appropriate $25,000 to be deposited into the Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund, which is actually a different fund. Article 8 is to deposit $55,000 into the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Article 9 is to raise and appropriate $60,000 to be deposited into the Highway Department Road and Bridge Improvement Plan Capital Reserve Fund. Article 10, $45,000 to be deposited into the Transfer Station Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Article 11 is $50,000 to be deposited into the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund. Article 12 is $50,000 to be deposited into the Town Hall Renovation Capital Reserve Fund. Article 13 is $15,000 to be deposited into the Revaluation Capital Reserve Fund. The ABC recommended 0.
I think, can I stop you there? Because Article 12, we didn't recommend Article 12.
No, that came from the CIP.
Yeah, so I think we need to be clear in terms of these are a kind of a combination of what the ABC said and what the CIP is calling for.
Right.
So these are not coming from the ABC, because the ABC said no to number 12. And they
Okay.
hadn't seen articles
But I
about 6 and
typically
7.
Build the warrant based on the CIP.
Okay. Well, I think the board needs to know that, because you've noted in 13 that we didn't recommend that one, but we didn't recommend 12 either. So, and we hadn't seen 6 and 7. So that's with my ABC hat on.
Yep.
Your ABC hat, I got you. We're gonna
Article
go through that again.
13, $15,000 to go into reval. Article 14, deposit $15,000 into the Internal Service Expendable Trust Fund for accrued benefits. The ABC recommended $30,000. Article 15 was $10,000 to be deposited into the Recreation Capital Reserve Fund. Article
ABC
6.
recommended nothing on that one either. So,
Okay. Article 16 is the contingency fund at $20,000. Article 17 is to see if the town will adopt the provisions of RSA 287E relative to the conduct of games of bingo and the sale of Lucky 7 tickets. That came from the Lee Fair Committee.
can I stop you there? Can the Lee Fair Committee, I understand the bingo, but what is this Lucky 7 stuff? Can maybe Karen can explain what that is?
It's all in the RSA. It's one, that's the
Oh.
wording that comes directly from the RSA. So it's, I think you have to do it exactly as presented.
Okay, thank you.
Right, you can't approve bingo and not approve Lucky 7.
Oh my goodness.
I'm assuming.
I get the whole package.
Gaming Commission wants to sell Lucky 7 tickets. Article 18 is to change the purpose of the existing fire pond and cistern capital reserve fund to allow for maintenance and installation of new. Right now, the fund allows for repair and replacement of existing. And Article 19 is to deposit $9,249 into the Town Building Capital Reserve Fund. Those funds are coming from the unassigned fund balance, although they represent the grant funds that were received from the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance for the town hall and parish house assessments.
Can I stop you there?
Sure, because we're at the
We
end.
only got $4,500 from them. They didn't approve the one for the town hall.
Okay,
So the amount of money should not be $92.49. It should be just $4,500.
okay,
So if you can tweak that, that would be good.
yeah. Okay,
While we're still on this, Mr. Bugby, you had said you haven't seen 6 or 7. You want to speak to that again?
When the ABC did their deliberations, they did not know about 6 and 7. So there is no, that was not deliberated because they did not know about those.
Okay.
The other things in article number 8, they recommended a different mount. They only recommended, I think it was 40, I think.
Mhm.
The other thing, I think, one of the things I want the select board to consider is, right now, the planning board gives us a CIP and as we all know, it's a planning tool. I think at some point, the board needs to take a look in terms of what we should be planning for, what we're going to be funding. Because just because it's in the plan doesn't necessarily mean we're going to fund it. So I think at some point, the board needs to go and do an exercise to find out exactly what it is we're saving for, and are we actually going to be saving and purchasing whatever that particular thing is. I know the department heads put in a lot of I want and I wish sometimes, and also in there is also I need. So I think the board needs to go through those and quantify each of those. Because some of the things that we're saving for, I personally don't think we need at this particular time. And maybe we do, and I just don't know enough information about it. But I think we should go through the process so we can know what those particular things are that we want to fund in the future, and what things that we don't necessarily want to include in the next 5, 10 years, whatever.
Nicely said. Of course, the CIP is a planning document, as you said. It's not necessarily a requirement by law.
Yeah.
I agree.
Could I speak to the deposit of $10,000 that's, I don't know which warrant article it is, but the Recreation Commission?
15.
Go ahead.
At the time that we deliberated, one of the things that we were looking at was the amount of money that was already in the trust fund. And at the time, there was not anything really decided in terms of what they were going to do with it. There had been some conversation about possibly a new tennis court, and the numbers at the time that we were looking at were less than the balance in the account. Subsequently, I guess the estimates that have been batted around have been higher than that, but at this point, they don't have anything that they're planning to spend that money on. So putting additional funds in that trust account didn't seem to make much sense to us.
And
Thank you.
if I could speak from a member of the rec commission too, we would be fine with not getting a deposit this year.
Thank you on that.
So would the other 2 board members be amenable to removing 15 completely, Len, at this time?
Yes. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Yeah, because we had made that decision a while back to move the tennis court down to Little River Park and try to build something reasonable down there.
Yep.
So Article 15 will be removed.
And in addition to that, Article 13, I would move that we remove that one as well. We're going to be talking about the reeval, but there's more than enough money in the reeval fund to fund the evaluation, in my estimate. So I don't think we need to put any more money in that particular fund this particular year. I think we need to start building it up again next year.
Which fund is that?
It's the reevaluation fund.
I'm not familiar with that. Could you tell me what that is?
We save money so that every 5 years we have to do a reevaluation. As of the end of June 30th, 2020, we had 63,000, and we're going to be talking about it later on, but unless we do the most expensive reeval, which was 75,000, we should have money, more than enough money in that particular fund. So I don't think we need to put any in this particular year.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yes, I agree.
Before we move forward on that, what's your opinion, Town Administrator?
Well, for the past couple of years, we've actually gotten the reval last couple of years, the last 2 cycles, which is actually 10 years. We actually didn't spend all that money in 2011 or 2016 to get the reval done. And as you saw, and we are going to talk about a little later, it's not, the cost isn't that high again for fiscal or for 2021. So I would reluctantly agree that we could probably not put the money in. I just, we just don't want to get behind.
Mm-hmm. Would you suggest a different amount?
No, I mean, we can either
Okay.
put something in or nothing in. And Mr. Bugby's correct. We're going to be okay for the 2021 reval.
And one of the things that, in terms of the number I just gave you, was the balance at June 30th, 2020, which was $63,856.73. It's my understanding also that the deposits haven't been made. I want to talk about that later, but the deposits for this fiscal year have not been made. So I believe in March, we voted another 15,000. So that would bring up the fund to 78,000 plus.
Mhm.
And we're talking about reeval in the, $40,000 to $50,000 range. So there's going to be sufficient funds in that. I don't think we need to put any more money in there.
All right, I go along with you. Let's remove Article 13.
Okay.
I agree.
Right, good. So Article 15 is gone and Article 13 is out. And Article 19 is reduced to 4,500. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
Mr.
you-
Chairman, could I comment on Article 14?
Please. Go ahead.
The reason that the ABC recommended monies over and above what had been budgeted or actually deposited previously was that the accrued benefits fund is underfunded substantially. So we were proposing an increase for the next 5 years to get the balance in the fund close to the liability.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bugby, you spoke about Article 12. You want to speak to that?
Oh, we have so many things to do. And we'll be talking about in the next agenda item, the proposal from the Town Hall Renovation Committee. But one of the things that, at least this is from the ABC, what they're thinking, that in terms of the amount of money that you need to match the LCHIP grant that we're looking for, we probably need another $50,000. And the reason they said, let's put it in the town buildings capital reserve fund instead of the town hall renovation capital reserve fund is because that one is less restrictive. It can be used on any particular building. And we've already checked, and LCHIP doesn't care what fund it is, just that, the monies are available. So the ABC recommended 50,000 into the town buildings capital reserve fund, which is Article 11, and nothing into the town hall renovation capital reserve fund.
So the 50,000 in 11 would stay at 50,000.
That is what they're proposing. I think the board needs to take a look at terms of what the Town Hall Renovation Committee is proposing,
Okay,
what the LCHIP grant is going to be, and what the board is comfortable having in terms of the funds for that particular purpose. So that's another discussion.
yep. We don't have to make that decision now, but I do understand where you're going at this point.
Okay.
Floor is still open. Anything else associated with these draft warrants?
Mr. Chairman, could I speak to Article 18, please?
Please, go ahead.
I see three problems with Article 18 as it's worded. The first is that the wording can be read in two different ways. It could be read as that the purpose is being changed to maintenance of existing fire ponds and cisterns in the installation of new fire ponds and cisterns. Or it could be read that the new purposes are being added to the previous purposes. So I think that the way it's worded, there could be a confusion in the future as to whether there are two purposes listed for the fund or four purposes listed for the fund. When a change of purpose is done, I think that it's always best if the new full purpose is listed, and that is a overwrite, if you will, of whatever the previous purpose is. It's not something being added to. The other problem that I see, second problem that I see, is that maintenance is a non-capital expense. So the changed fund, if it includes a purpose of maintenance, it would be a kind of hybrid of a capital reserve fund and a non-capital reserve fund. The third problem I see, and I think this is the biggest one, is the problem for the voters. The voters can see the capital projects that are in the CIP, and they can vote for those amounts to fund those projects. But if non-capital expenses are withdrawn from the fund, then the amount saved may come up short. So that the voters can know what they're voting for, I think that maintenance funds should come from a separate non-capital reserve fund or from the budget. And that this fund should be only for capital expenses. That's what the voters see in the CIP, and that's what they would think they're voting for and expect to be voting for.
I see your point.
Could you-
But it depends on, does that only mean new, or can capital mean substantial?
Capital, let me get it up. So it was section 35(1) that allowed the establishment of capital reserve funds. It says the establishment of reserves authorized. They raise and appropriate money for the establishment of a capital reserve fund for the financing of all or part of construction, reconstruction, or acquisition of a specific capital improvement, or the acquisition of a specific item or specific items of equipment, or construction, reconstruction, or acquisition of a type of capital improvement, or acquisition of a type of equipment. So the original fund was created for the repair of fire ponds and or cisterns, and replacing those cisterns that were in place and eventually 20 or 30 years down the road needed to be replaced. And both of those are capital expenses. When fire cisterns go bad, start to leak, it's a big expense. Right now, the CIP for one of the cisterns at Elder Osborne is budgeting $50,000 to repair the cistern. That's half the cost of a new one. And at the time it was originally, the fund was originally created, they weren't thinking about installing new cisterns around town. So new cisterns are certainly also a capital expense. And so those three things, the major repairs, the replacement, and installing new ones, those are all capital expenses. The maintenance, capital reserves were authorized back in 1943. 35(1)(c), which was effective in 1995, authorized non-capital reserve funds for maintenance and operation of a specific public facility or type of facility. And so when you talk about maintenance, that's a non-capital expense. And the problem for the voters is that where there are already agents to expend for this fund, and it makes sense that there be agents to expend, because if in the middle of a fiscal year, a fire cistern fails, catastrophic leak, and needs to be replaced, you don't want to have to wait a year before you can replace it. So for the voters, if you add maintenance, you're now allowed to do any kind of routine maintenance and take it out of that fund. And the voters, they could be saving money for that new cistern that they see in the CIP. And depending on what the maintenance is, which no longer would have to come out of your operating budget, when it gets time to buy that new cistern, there may not be enough money there.
Thank you, Mr. Tappan. I understand what you're saying. Um,
Mr. LaCourse, could we ask whoever submitted this
yes.
what they're trying to accomplish by this change? Is it just to add the ability to acquire new fire ponds and cisterns? Is that the point of this particular change in their eyes?
You read my
I
mind.
can address that, Scott.
Okay.
We were asked, the trustees of trust funds were asked about using this fund for a major repair. If I remember right, I believe it is the Elder Osborne cistern. And as I understand it, in order to repair the leak, they believe that they have to empty the cistern, excavate. They think that there may be rocks or something on the outside that's causing it to leak. Backfill it with correct material, repair the cistern, and refill it. So it's a huge expense.
Mhm.
When we were asked that question, of course, as trustees, we go back and look at the purpose. And all of a sudden it occurred to us that this purpose does not allow you to install new cisterns where there had never been cisterns before. The original wording didn't allow for that. It says replacement. And yet, of course, in the CIP, there's plans for putting in new. I was on a committee when we even talked about the new cistern at Lee Hill.
Uh-huh.
And yet I had never gone back and studied the wording to see if it actually allowed that. And so that's the reason for adding what I think should be adding the purpose of installing new cisterns. And so it would be, I think it should be three things. It should be for the repair and for the replacement and for the installation of new.
Okay.
And I would recommend not having the word maintenance in there.
Okay.
I think that maintenance, for many things, maintenance should come from either a separate non-capital reserve fund or it should be in the budget.
Okay.
I understand perfectly. What do you think, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Yeah, I happen to agree with Mr. Tappan's
Yeah.
advice at this time.
So
Yes.
can I ask the fire chief a question?
Please.
Because this came about for the exact reason Mr. Tappan stated, that we have an issue where we could not use this fund to maintain our existing fire ponds. So if we take the word maintenance out, do you know of any of the existing fire ponds that are going to need maintenance in the next year? Because if so, I don't think there's any money in the operating budget for that.
We have already, we did approve a year or two ago a large amount of money. It was, I don't remember off the top of my head, it was tens of thousands of dollars for digging out, I think it was at least one, maybe two fire ponds. This is something that you know you'll have to do it eventually. It is not a routine schedule it every 2 years or 5 years. Because the function of the fire pond as it fills in, it gradually, there less and less water there to draw on. So we considered that to be a repair.
Right, but I
we
think
funded
the
that.
issue, again, and this is why I was asking the fire chief, I think the issue is that what we learned is if we don't maintain the existing fire ponds regularly, then we do end up with a bigger problem.
Then I think that if that's the case, then you should have a separate maintenance, a non-capital reserve fund for maintenance, so that you can see what those expenses are. And that might be something that I don't know how many fire ponds there are. If it's something that's done on a rotating basis so that you're actually doing one every year, then it just ought to be in your operating budget. Reserve funds.
Fire Chief, are you there to speak?
Yep.
Please, go ahead.
So if the committee looks at us dredging fire ponds as a repair, then I don't have a list right now. I'd have to really go through the list of fire ponds that we have and go through that again and kind of see where we're at. I know we have the CIP, but the maintenance of the existing fire ponds, like Julie was talking about, is to upkeep those fire ponds. So I'm fine with adding a maintenance line to our fire department budget so we can complete that. I think it's something that needs to be done every year so that we can maintain those fire ponds. And I think because we haven't been maintaining them, that's where we get into dredging them, and that's why it's costing us more and more money. So I'm fine with taking the maintenance out and putting it in our budget. But this is what has occurred is, you know, a couple of years ago, we did do Tamarack and James Farm, and we had to do that because we haven't been maintaining them. And I think going along with the installation of them, when the fire ponds and cisterns capital reserve fund was put together, I think the cisterns were kind of new to our town. I wasn't chief at the time, and so I don't think that we thought that far ahead. Two chiefs from me did a whole study of the town, and there's definitely areas of town that needs more water. So then that got thrown into the capital improvements plan as well. So I think this has grown over time. I think it's many different things, and we just got to figure out how we're going to handle it. Julie's right. We do have Elder Osborne that has been leaking. It's always been an issue, and we're trying to figure out a way to work on that. So I think all of these kind of came together at once, and we're just trying to determine the correct way of doing it.
So I guess at this point, what I'm hearing is that the word maintenance has to come out, but it still has to be a modified because we're going to add, construction of new cisterns and fire ponds. Let me ask you the question. Just tell me what maintenance is associated with different between a repair and maintenance. Fire chief.
For me, maintenance is the upkeep of the fire ponds. It's mowing the grass, cutting down some of the trees that are around the pond that drops the leaves into the ponds. Over time that starts building up. We have issues with it, and then we have to dredge it. If we can upkeep that, a couple of feet out around the ponds, that's maintenance to me. Repairs is something like Elder Osborne. We have a leak in the ground. We need to excavate it to get down there to figure out where the leak's coming from, put in the right materials if we have to do that to fix that.
So the next question leads is if we remove this maintenance, which I think we should at this point. I think Mr. Tappan has nicely laid that out for us. Do you need to increase your budget somewhere, or do you have enough to absorb it for this year?
I have no line item that can pay for the maintenance right now.
Do you have a guesstimate?
I'd have to talk to some people to figure that out, to figure that cost out.
Could you please work on that for the next meeting?
Yeah, I can do that. Definitely.
I can speak for it,
Please.
since we're the ones that end up doing it.
Well, now we got the real person. No,
Yeah, we got the real person.
To rent the machine to be able to do it, to mow it and stuff like that, which we just did to Duff Thompson. We mowed that one with a machine and then went in there and hand cut it, and it took one person a week to finish hand cutting it.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it had grown in bad. That one was bad. None of them are that bad now. My guess is we probably would only need like $2,500 to be able to do it, and that would be for a machine, because we could get it done quicker. A machine with a mower head to just run in and cut the grass and everything down on the multiple ones. So that'd probably be like $2,000, $2,500.
Okay.
And as long as we keep up with it on a constant basis, it should never really go any higher than that. It's when we don't do it like on Duff Thompson, it takes a machine and then it takes one other guy a whole entire week to cut it by hand, because we were cutting trees out of that one that were 6 inches in diameter. So, and that was the worst one, and we got that one all cut back. So that one's in a lot better shape than it was.
Thank you.
So maybe Steve, you and Scott can work together to find out what that number is. And Scott, could you let us know what that number is that you decide on with the highway department?
Yeah, I can do that.
And could you work with Mr. Tappan and get the realignment of Article 18?
Sure.
Okay, thank you on that. Any other comments on the draft warrant?
The only other comment I meant to make at the beginning is this year I did it slightly differently. This year, you'll notice that all of the articles say the select board recommends. Obviously, the select board has not made a decision yet. So that's essentially a placeholder. I will say that in the 9 or 10 years I've been doing the warrant, there's only been one article that the board didn't approve.
Mhm. Thank you on that. I noticed under the, with respect to the agenda on the first public hearing, we need to talk about the default budget, or can we put that off?
I just noticed that it looks like there's an error in there's a number in here that I didn't input, so I need to talk to DRA about it because this is a report that's generated from the DRA portal.
Okay.
So it's saying that there's an increase in the personnel administration, but that's not an allowable increase. As you may recall, the state legislature has tightened up the rules over the past years regarding default budgets and how they can be, we'll use the word manipulated.
Mhm. Okay, so we'll put that off till next time. When's the next budget hearing?
January 11th.
Okay. Any other comments on draft warrant before I close public hearing?
Not from me.
Mr. Brown, anything?
No, I'm okay. When we have our next meeting, I don't want to go head to head with John Tappan over capital budgets, but I do have some comments to make against it, but we don't have to do it tonight.
Okay. Therefore, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the public hearing. And we'll pick it up and continue with this discussion on January 11th. Next item of business, Mr. Bugby, we're going to talk about town hall renovation.
I'm really the happy face at the beginning, and then John's going to tell you all the good and the bad news.
Mhm.
So, John's going to do a presentation. Julie, can you allow Mr. Tappan to share his screen so he can share the information with us?
Yeah, as always, if I can figure out how to do that.
It looks like I can do it. Yes, I
Yeah,
can.
you should be able to now. Yep.
So, okay, see the header page there?
Yes, I do.
Yep.
Okay, so Town Hall Renovation Committee and our presentation. And what we're actually doing is Town Hall rehabilitation. And National Park Service defines rehabilitation as making possible a compatible use while preserving historic, cultural, and architectural values. So we're going to present some conceptual floor plans, a conceptual site plan, estimated costs, and a schedule. And jumping right into conceptual floor plans. In this one, we're talking about, and actually in all of these, we're talking about a remodeling the 1968 edition. That's the Town Clerk Tax Collector's Office. That's new enough that there are no elements in there that are considered important historical elements. So in this, the main entry door has been moved. It's still at the back, but it's in a new position. All of the windows that are shown in the drawing are the existing windows, except for there is a new window here at the end of this toilet room hallway. And over here at the conference room, what is currently a door from the tax collector's office has been replaced by a window. There is a entry vestibule. It's short, but there is now a vestibule which isn't there now. There would be a vestibule which isn't there now. There's a very small kitchenette. Both of these toilet rooms are meet ADA requirements. The conference room here seats 8 at a 4-foot by 8-foot table. It could hold the select board non-public sessions. There is also a very small custodial closet. In the main hall, the floor will be completely removed. Crawl space will be correctly finished. New structure for the floor will be built, and the existing hardwood flooring would be reinstalled. The dais, or stage it's sometimes called, is considered an historic feature, and it has to remain. A new steel beam would be fit in the ceiling, which would allow the removal of the column that's right now in the middle of the room. The front door would be returned to its original size, which is approximately 48 inches wide by 90 inches high. This actually gives us a benefit in doing the construction. We were asked by the architect if we could allow that door to be increased from the 36 inches wide, then when they tear out all of the floor structure here and have to take out some of the soil from the crawl space, they would actually be able to bring in equipment through the front door to do that. And it would restore the appearance of the building to its original appearance. The interior stairway here is historic. This exact stairway may not be original, but there was originally a stairway there. That would be reinforced as required, but what's there now would be kept. To look out a little bit beyond just the edges of the building.
Oh, John, could you speak to the chair and table storage, please?
Oh, sure. Over here, we show two portable on wheels chair and table storage carts. These are similar to a cart that presently over at the Public Safety Complex. This is showing carts that store 6-foot long tables on the bottom level and then folding chairs on the top level. These could be moved to other places depending on what activity was going on. They will fit through a 36-inch doorway. So if there was some event that needed all the space possible and no tables or chairs, these could be wheeled into the conference room, say, for some very unusual and special event. One design of these, when the chairs and tables are removed, the empty cart has some bars up at the top and it can function as a coat rack. So it could be that in some winter event, you could have these lined up and would give people a place to hang up coats instead of on the backs of the chairs. Oh, and the sizes that I've drawn, because it depends on what type of folding chairs you get and it depends on the design of the tables, but these could hold 42 chairs each and 10 tables each. So 84 chairs is probably about the maximum that you would want to set up in here, although the room would be rated for more than that. Anything else? Other questions there?
John, the column to be removed,
Yes.
what is that supporting?
There's a large beam that runs from over the front door down the whole length of the building. We believe that the beam, or at least a beam in that location, was original, but previously there was a chimney at this location. And so it's just guessed that chimney supported the beam.
Oh,
That runs the length of the building.
Okay.
And obviously you would like to get rid of that, not have that column there. People have asked about holding dances here. So, and when you go and set up chairs, arrangements of chairs, the column's in the way. So the plan is that a steel beam would be fit, probably a steel beam in the ceiling going side to side.
Okay, because I remember the office above that area had a steel rod that came down.
Yes.
Okay. So to me, I felt that steel rod was really important. So I'm trying to understand what that is. Okay.
Yeah, that steel rod is important. It's a tension element in the rafter and floor joist structure for that office. That office was probably original to the building.
Yep.
The stairs are probably original to the building as indicated by the asymmetrical arrangement of windows. On the west side, there are 4 windows. On the east side, there are just 3. In front, there's appears to be a symmetrical arrangement, but we believe that on the right, this one here, was always just a shutter. That there is no window in there, but we haven't confirmed that. And if these stairs were not original, they would not have done this. We don't think they would have done this asymmetric arrangement of windows on this side. And we have read that a common design for town halls at that time was to have a selectman's office at the front of the building on the 2nd floor. I've even seen one assessment of an old town hall in another town where outside the office, there was a original bench built where the public could wait before they got to speak with the selectman.
Well,
Yeah.
for me, that's kind of interesting. You know, I occupied that office a couple times a week for X months. And during that time, I had 3 visits, and they were all you.
Okay, well, then it's worth having.
Yeah.
So now to look outside, a little bit outside this footprint in the next drawing, backed out a little bit so that at the top we can see the tool shed in its current location. And it is not parallel with the back of the town hall. This shows a new ADA ramp to get to the door. The ramp that's there right now does not meet ADA requirements. And this shows a new external stairway as an exit from the 2nd floor. The stairway that's there is built of wood. It needs to be replaced. The dimensions of it do not meet current code requirements. The replacement is to be fabricated in a factory steel replacement. And what I've shown here has a much larger top landing. It has a run to the stairs that meets code. And in order to get in the number of stairs that are required for a landing, which is close to the same height as the interior floor, it's 1 more step. And every step is, tread is 1 inch deeper. So it does extend out a little bit further. And then at the front of the building, there is an ADA ramp. I haven't shown where it goes. That's something of a landscaping issue, but it curves around a little bit out here, but it would not hug the building because this is the drip edge of the building. This does show removing the front vestibule. This door would not be the normal entry door. We would still be keeping the back door as the usual entry door to the building because this is where we have a vestibule to help with a walk-off mat to try to keep dirt outside of the building. And we didn't want to cut into the main floor area with putting a vestibule in here. It should be noted that if you step outside the vestibule that's there right now, you have to turn your foot sideways and put it right against the vestibule to keep from going off of town property. The town property at the corner, this corner of the vestibule is a couple of inches away. The property line is a couple of inches away from the corner of the vestibule. So next I have another design. We explored what could be done if the 1968 edition was lengthened a little bit. And that's this design. This is just one possible. Here again, the entry is through a door, same position as the previous. There's room for a larger vestibule. There's still two ADA accessible toilet rooms. There's a significantly larger kitchenette. There's sort of a little bit of common area here where people are crossing paths either toward the toilet rooms, toward the conference room, or the kitchenette. When you enter in the vestibule, there's a blank wall ahead of you, which is much better than seeing the kitchenette ahead of you. This blank wall is a place where you could have events listed. You could have direction signs that say meeting X or Y is in the small conference room to the left, or it's in the main hall straight ahead. When I thought about this, one of the things that occurred to me is that right now we have two wood buildings. And at this end, they're just over 8 feet apart. Up here, they're just over 9 feet apart. And they're both wood construction, both flammable, and both historic buildings on the state register. So if we had a fire in one, and fire chief could talk to this better than I can, but it seems like there's a good chance it could spread to the other. So moving them even closer together might be a bad idea, except that if this was new construction, then the construction of this wall could be made fire resistant. When buildings are close together, there's usually requirements for, it's not just plain wood construction that burns easily. We have not investigated this. We haven't talked to the fire chief about it, and we have not worked on pricing for it. But it does look like there's the possibility of making the building even more functional. Any questions before I move on to site plans?
John, second floor, you haven't talked about it.
Second floor. Right now, the second floor is not accessible per ADA. And to make it accessible per ADA requires a lift, at least a Lula lift. And when we talked to the architect previously and the historic building consultant, that was something that they thought was quite possible because the 1968 edition is not considered historic because it's behind the building as viewed from the road. They thought that it would be possible to do something back in this area where to put in a lift, it would have to be something that was taller than the 1968 edition, but being so far back from the road, it would not subtract from the appearance, but it's expensive. So what we have costed right now does not allow for public access to the second floor. In some ways that's a shame because the second floor, after the building is rehabbed, after you can no longer see out through holes in the wall and gaps around the door, after it has a new heating and cooling system, after the structure of the dormers is reinforced, which is in the plan, and the second floor is insulated, it's a very nice work area up there. And it would be nice if it could be accessible for to the public. But right now our plan without that cost is that it could be office space. One of the things that does need to be done is to assess the strength of this floor. That was not done in the original assessment. If it was office space, it could be office space for committees or commissions. Our committee is a little bit mixed about that because we would really like to have all of the spaces that the town uses be accessible. We really don't want to have a situation where somebody in town who cannot go upstairs but has time and abilities and knowledge that could be valuable to the town and would like to volunteer for conservation or heritage or agriculture commissions, comes and asks Denise, and when they find out that their office is upstairs, even though the meetings aren't upstairs, but the office is upstairs, they decide not to volunteer because they don't want to be the person that makes that commission move their office or inconveniences them. But right now the plan is that it could be office space for committees or commissions, but it's not public access space.
Thank you, John.
Okay. So next I have looking at site plans. And the first is the existing site plan. What's there right now? I want to talk about the setbacks. The bog is up here, and there are 3 setbacks from the bog. There's a 50-foot setback, which is a setback from surface water for wells. A new well, if there's a new well put in at town center, new wells have to be at least 50 feet from surface water. There's a 75-foot setback from wet soils. That's for structures to be built. You can see that we have structures that were built in the past that are well inside that 75-foot. The 125-foot setback here is for septic systems. The current well is over here behind the town hall annex. There's a 50-foot setback from the well, and that's for parking lots, roads, and driveways. This is old, so we do have a parking lot within that 50 feet. There's a 125-foot sanitary protective radius. This distance, 125 feet, depends on the daily draw from the well, and that's calculated by the use in these buildings that the well serves. That was calculated by the previous architect at 2,500 gallons per day. I did the calculation myself and came up with a little bit less than 2,500. So 2,500 puts us in the range of 1,400 to 4,300, where this distance has to be 125 feet. So septic systems have to be outside of that 125 feet, as do some other hazards. There's also a setback of 1/2 of 125, 62.5 feet. And that's a setback for pressure tested septic piping. You can have pressure tested septic piping in this range between the 62.5 and the 125. But other septic system components have to be outside the 125. You can see that currently we have a septic tank here, a dry well over here, a septic tank for the library here, and a dry well here for that septic tank, all within the 125 feet. I did find the documentation when this septic tank and dry well were put in, and it was approved by DES back in 1980, so apparently back then the rules were different. It could be that back then the expected draw from the well was much smaller. Maybe only the annex was considered. At that time, it had just been made into a police station. There are a total of 21 parking spaces in front of between the library and the town hall. There's another 4 parking spaces in front of the annex. And you can see that we have parking spaces that are in the right of way. Any questions there?
I'm good. Thank you.
So next, look at a concept for this site plan. And this is based on an addition being put onto the library, another toilet room in the library, the use of the town hall changing from being office space to being function and meeting space, and another toilet room being added to that. Because of those changes, it means that the use of this driveway, which we currently have, which is 175 feet wide, which DOT does not like at all.
Yeah.
The use of the driveway is changing. So for us to be honest and play by the rules, that means that the driveway should be made to conform to current DOT regulations. And that requires a driveway a max of 50 feet, not counting the flares at the road. So this is drawing a real driveway. It's an important safety feature because now when you pull off of Route 155, you're pulling into a driveway instead of immediately pulling into a parking lot where there are cars that may be backing out of spaces, there may be people walking between cars. So that's why you should be pulling into a driveway before you get to the parking lot. And that loses quite a few parking spaces. So this is showing an addition, which we have budgeted for. It's modest. It gives us a total of 32 stalls. There are 3 van access. There's no specified delivery stall. The well that's here could not be continued to be used if you're building new parking areas immediately adjacent to it, almost on top of it. So it's suggested that the well, a new well, be put back here. By putting it back here, it's just outside the 50-foot setback from the surface water. Its 125-foot sanitary protective radius doesn't quite reach to the parking lot here, or doesn't cover much of it. So our suggested location for new septic tank, and particularly the effluent disposal area, would be underneath the new pavement. This well would be sized just to serve all of the future buildings at the town center. So the setback is based on the well serving a library and the town hall, and also serving at some time in the future an office building. Let's see.
John, can I interject for a second?
Sure.
That well also runs underneath 155 and supplies all the water to the cemetery.
Whoa.
That was one thing that I found out from Karen Rossi, even though I didn't see Karen Rossi today. That cement cover that we talked about, John?
Yes.
The shut off for the water to the cemetery across the road.
So the water goes from the well
to the cement.
The pressure tank is in.
No, John, the water doesn't go from the well. The water goes from the well to that cement cover, and then inside that cement cover, it goes to every single building, and then it also has a split that runs all the way across underneath 155 to the cemetery.
Okay. And there's a pressure tank in the annex. The pump is in the well.
Yep.
So
So every spring we crawl inside that metal or that concrete cover and
Yep.
shut the water off. And then we hook a pump up inside the cemetery and flush the water back to that concrete
Okay,
cover. But that's how we get water across the street so people can water their plots and stuff.
okay. Well, then there's something there that we need to consider in what we've factored in for pricing. Because we were not aware of that. And what we have factored in for pricing is a new well, water from the well running to the basement of the schoolhouse where the pressure tank would be, and from there supplying water to the town hall. And we factored in all of that, but we did not count on, or we haven't factored in supplying water to the cemetery. So take that under advisement and we will figure out the fix for that.
All right. I kind of figured you guys didn't know about it. That's why I wanted to say something.
Okay, good, thank you.
So, Steve, I would assume you'd rather not have it, the shut off in that cement conduit. Wouldn't you rather have it maybe possibly in the library and you just shut it off from there?
I mean, we could. It doesn't matter. We only go in there twice a year, and
Okay. All right.
Yeah, what we were anticipating is that the shut off to other buildings would be in the basement of the schoolhouse section of the library. So it could be done the same, but what we have not built into the cost is that additional distribution piping of water to get to where you could connect to the line going to the library, I mean, to the cemetery.
that concrete structure is going to be right underneath your well or off to the side a little bit. So the concrete structure doesn't really need to move. You can just run the pipe from the Lee Library to that concrete structure and it wouldn't be that big a deal because the concrete structure should be not in the actual parking lot, judging by the picture you have right there. Or if it is, you just put a manhole cover in it.
Yeah, I think it's in the parking area.
All right, there it is. So you just put a manhole cover over it.
Right. So that's it right there. And that's why I didn't recognize that that was where it split off to go to cemetery. Yeah, that certainly is possible. All I'm stating is that when we get to look at the prices, that hasn't been factored in. Compared to the other prices, it's not a big item either. So I think, if there aren't any other questions about this concept plan. Oh, there is one other thing. I am showing here, and it is built into the price. There is some site lighting. This is showing 2 poles to provide some illumination for this parking area out here. That is built into the price. And these could be timed so that nowadays they could be at full brightness when there are events going on, and then the rest of the evening they might be fairly dim. So next, we lumped the costs into 3 different categories. The first was pre-construction, those things that we would have to be completed before we could make an application to LCHIP. The second category is the town hall building rehabilitation itself, directly associated with the building. Those are things that LCHIP could contribute to. The maximum that LCHIP will contribute is a matching 50-50, but that's not really expected. As an example, this year, they gave out grants totaling 4.1 million, and they expect those to be matched by 17 million from other sources. So if you add up all the projects that they funded this year, the LCHIP grant was a little less than 20% of the total of all those projects that were funded. And then the third category is site work. Site work for the town hall, the library, and the museum. All of these buildings factor into the costs when we looked at relocating the propane tanks, the plumbing for the propane, the well, the distribution of water, though there's no water to the museum, and parking. So getting to the costs. This is a summary. The pre-construction, we come up with $48,000. I should state up front, we think that these are very conservative. We have not tried to minimize them. We have added what we thought were fairly healthy escalations and contingencies. Most of the costs in pre-construction are things that we have quotes for. And then we have added on a 5% escalation because we're not doing the work at the time of the quotes. Town hall building rehabilitation. That includes a project manager who works for the town. It includes 5% escalation on the labor plus 15% escalation on the materials. And this is being really conservative for the conditions that exist right now. With what's happened between COVID-19 and trade between our country and foreign countries, the cost and availability of some materials, costs have gone up significantly, and sometimes availability has been a problem. This may not be something that continues a year from now, but right now, we think it's a conservative to factor that in. This also has 15% contingency. And when you're taking apart a 170 plus year old building, you don't know for sure what you're going to find. And the architect in the assessment that we have for the building recommended putting on 26% for the general contractor's overhead and profit. So that totals almost $580,000. And here we're showing the maximum possible LCHIP grant of 50%, which is probably more than you should expect. But expressing that as the maximum means that this amount over here for the town's share is the minimum. It would be at least that much. Site work for town hall, library, museum, again, includes a project manager working for the town. It's the design of those systems, water, septic, and driveway, parking. Site preparation, you saw that there's features there that have to be moved, like the propane tank. There's features that have to be decommissioned, like septic tanks and dry wells. They can't just be ignored or abandoned. New parking and driveway, new water system, septic system. This does include 5% escalation and 15% contingency. That's 187, almost 188 total. So the project total is almost 816. Of that, the most that LCHIP could possibly fund would be about 290, and that leaves 525 for the town. But as I said, the funding from LCHIP is not likely to be that amount. Our town hall, what we've heard from the historic building consultant, is that what we would receive from funding for the town hall would largely depend on what else was in the mix, what else was being applied for. The town hall is on the historic register. It does score fairly well. But the way LCHIP looks at it, the town of Lee is probably not going to let the town hall go into the landfill. They are going to save it one way or another. Whereas LCHIP really wants to put their money where they make a difference, they make things possible. So Any questions on this before I go on to schedule?
I just, maybe reeling back just a touch at this point. I'm glad that you laid out the parking lot and the lights and everything else and talked about the well could feed a new municipal building.
Yes.
Obviously, there would have to be another second septic field, correct, for the new municipal building if we go that way?
Yes, when we were considering this in the previous plans, the recommendation was that the septic system, because these two buildings are close together, that you put a septic system over here. We have a very flat building site, very level building site. And that the new office building, whether it's over here someplace or back here, that it would have its own septic system. The distances could be so great that to tie into all into one septic system, one of the systems would have to be pumped. You would have to be pumping effluent to the central septic system rather than gravity flow.
Mhm.
Potable water under pressure is not too expensive to distribute around the building site.
Okay.
You know, big cities do that all over the city. But pumping effluent around the building's site didn't seem to make sense.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we don't go in this direction, then we have to take something apart to modify it as we finally get to a new municipal building at some time in the future.
That's correct. The well, the line from the well, the pump would all be sized to handle all of the buildings that might be here. The pressure tank in the basement, pressure tanks can be put in parallel. So the single pressure tank might not be big enough for all the future buildings, but you could add a second pressure tank to the existing, or to the one tank that might be put in initially. But this septic system would be sized just for these two buildings.
Thank you, John.
Okay. So schedule. The committee has a schedule in a couple of different forms. This is one of them. I color coded this to show in black those items that are like town items: staff moving day, deliberative session, voting by ballot. In blue, those items that would go with relate to Wunderlich Malik, the architects, engineers that we might hire. This is the company that previously was AECM that did the assessments of the buildings. In this brick red color, those items that are related to LCHIP. And then in green, the request for quotes. To make an application to LCHIP for the dollar amounts that we're looking for, you need to have quotes from construction companies for doing the work that's anticipated. In order to get those quotes, you need to have construction drawings, not necessarily the fully completed final detailed drawings, but they need to be construction drawings that are adequate for the quotes. And that's these items in blue. And this is anticipating or based on what WME gave us previously for a schedule, but it's been extended a little bit to give them more time. This shows that if we give them 3 weeks from now, we are meeting with them tomorrow. Scott, that's still on?
Correct.
If we give them a go-ahead 3 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, which is longer than they originally planned, they could deliver to us designs that are 75% complete. I've put in 2 weeks for us to review them, another 2 weeks for them to complete them. We should be working on the RFQ another week, and RFQ is put together with the drawings and sent out. 5 weeks or a little over 5.5 weeks after that, construction quotes are due, and that gives us the construction quotes 4 weeks before the LCHIP applications are due. The costing in the LCHIP application is not the most difficult part. That's numbers. You can actually have all of that set up in spreadsheets, and then when the correct numbers come in, you just enter the new numbers. The most difficult part of the LCHIP application is all the other stuff. The talking about the importance of the building, the history of the building, the uses of the building, and so forth. And this is a long schedule. If you start this process this coming year, you don't find out until sometime around the middle or latter part of December whether or not you were awarded a grant, and if so, how much. Any questions on this?
John, I have a question. Is there, given the historic value of this building, what happens when we go in there and do all of this reconstruction, modernizing, et cetera, et cetera? What happens to the, if you would, the historic value? How does LCHIP look at that?
So that's why back here, I mentioned that the work that we're doing is what's called rehabilitation, and it would meet the National Park Service's definition. They have a whole 200-something page long document about the different types of renovation that you might do with historic buildings. And this is all going to be done in accordance with National Park Service's requirements for rehabilitation. And we are going to be preserving all of the features that convey the historical, cultural, and architectural values of that building. That's one of the reasons why that dais or stage at the front needs to stay. Personally, I can't see any value in it from a practical point of view. But it's not original to the building, but it's been there for what's probably more than 100 years. So it is considered part of the historic fabric. The second floor, Selectman's office and the stairway up to it, the woodwork that's up there, that beadboard on the walls and the ceiling of the Selectman's office upstairs, that's some of the oldest, or closest to original historic fabric of the inside of the building, other than the inside of the closet up there has some plaster that's thought to be original to 1846. So all of those features are going to be kept. We're working with a consultant. There was a consultant that worked on the assessment of the building. There's a pretty healthy cost in here for the consultant, preservation consultant in here to work on the designs. So all of those things are being kept. It's a way, and in a way we have the advantage of the use that we're anticipating for the building is actually much closer to its historic original use than the current use. Back in 1846, it was not an office building.
Yeah.
It was a meeting and function space for the town. So it's where they conducted the town business, and it's where they had dances.
It was also the first library.
Correct, upstairs before, I think it's around 1892,
1897.
1897, okay,
7.
was the library upstairs. So all of those historic features are being kept. The things like the replacement of the floor, the rotting wood underneath, all of that has to be replaced. The dirt crawl space has to be fixed. But the hardwood flooring that's there, that's going to be put back. It's not original, but it is quite old. And that's going to be reconditioned and put back. The foundation stones, those are historic, those are going to be kept. There are some vent spaces between the concrete blocks and the foundation. Those are covered up with hardware cloth. That's from way back when it was thought that putting in a few vent spaces would work to get the moisture out. Those features going to be kept. The hardware cloth that's been added on the outside is going to be removed. They will be blocked up on the inside so that they no longer let moisture in from outside, but from the outside they will look historic.
Okay, well, I carved my initials up there in that closet, so don't let them sand them away.
I think that's vandalism, Mr. Brown.
Okay.
Oh, no more secrets. It's being recorded. Thank you, John.
Yeah, good, very good.
The other thing, if I can just add, John, can you go back one slide? Yeah. So on December 15th, people keep asking me, and I don't know if they're asking the two of you, John and Carrie, well, what are you asking for in March? And we're not really asking for anything in March except money to go into those particular capital reserve fund. But the thing is, on December 15th, we're either going to get one of three choices, one of three outcomes. Either LCHIP's going to come back and say, yes, we'll give you all that you're asking for. They might come back and say, well, we got all kinds of other worthy causes and we're only giving you partial. Or they're going to come back and say, nope, sorry, we can't give you any money. At that point, the select board is going to have to decide how we proceed with this particular project, because all those three outcomes are different kind of responses from us, I would assume. So really, it's next March that we're going to have something on the ballot for moving forward this project, or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll decide we're not doing anything, but it's going to be the March 2022 vote that's going to have direct effect in terms of how we proceed with this particular project.
So Scott, are we competing, just for example, are we competing with the parish house for the same money?
No, there's nothing at the moment that we're proposing for the parish house at this particular time. What you're competing against is other people, other towns, other entities that are putting forward proposals. The thing that the board needs to be aware of, when I went to the Historic Preservation Resources workshop that's required for this, talking with Mr. Bourne, who is really the guy that's in charge of it. He's not in charge of the LCHIP program, but he's in charge of the funding program. There's 10 criteria LCHIP uses for funding, and the parish house checks just about all 10. So that is kind of a no-brainer. We've heard that from the Preservation Society person that we're working with. Parish house is a no-brainer. LCHIP will fund that because, one, it's destined to be torn down on July 1st, 2022. So that's one of those boxes that you need to check. The town hall checks 6 boxes, possibly 7. So as you can see, it's less than the 10. So if you've got a whole bunch of projects in there and they check, 8, 9, 10 boxes, you're probably not going to get any funding. So the town just needs to be aware of that. Mr. Tappan also expressed, the town is not going to tear down the town hall. And that's one of the boxes that is very, very important to LCHIP. So that's why it scores a little bit low. The building has great significance in terms of historical value, but LCHIP is looking, where can we put your money so that things don't get torn down, things don't get destroyed. So.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments on this? First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for doing an excellent job and a nice presentation. I think everybody knows what's going on and the opportunities that would afford us if we renovate, or excuse me, rehabilitate, I get it now, the existing town hall into a meeting and function space. So what I understand the committee is suggesting, what we already talked about in the draft warrant, is to put $50,000 into the capital building reserve fund. Is that correct?
Well, I think the thing that we need to talk about, John, that I would suggest is, one, as John pointed out, the maximum that LCHIP is probably going to match is the 289,000.
Yes.
We just have to have someplace designated that we have that amount of money set aside, because that's part of the application process.
Mhm.
How are you going to fund your match? And if we look at the funds that are available for that, the Renovating Town Hall Capital Reserve Fund has about 51,000 in it.
Mhm.
The Town Hall Buildings Capital Reserve Fund has 228, almost 229,000. There's still, I believe, 35,000 that needs to go into that. Is that correct, Mr. Tappan?
I thought that it was 50.
50, sorry.
Yes.
So that would bring us to 278 plus 251. That's way more than the 289. So I think that would suffice for showing LCHIP we have the funds to do their 50% match. But that's something that we need to decide. And it sounds like both selectmen are supportive for putting 50,000 in there. So hopefully that can stay. So.
Thank you for.
Yeah. The other thing we have to remember is in terms of the CIP, not ignoring the CIP, for the next few years, there's many things in those particular structures that are on the CIP to be replaced. There's a heating system, town hall heating system in the annex, and things like that. The project will take care of the stuff in the town hall. So that doesn't need to be considered.
I got you on that. Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Nice presentation. If it's possible, could I get a copy of what you presented? I appreciate that.
I think John can send it to Julie and Julie can pass it out to the three of us
I appreciate that.
or anybody else. It's a public document, as you know, John. So if anybody else wants it, maybe they can ask the town administrator to send them a copy as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
So let us move on at this point. Julie Glover, Town Administrator.
Sure. So the next thing we need to talk about is the deliberative session and the ballot session. I hope that you all had a chance to look at the latest guidance that we got from NHMA. It clarifies some things, but maybe not everything, although it does appear that we can do the virtual deliberative session, if you will, but also vote in person. We also have to allow drive-up voting. And I don't know what kind of challenges that may present for the people that run the election, especially if we're doing it at the safety complex. So I think it would be a good idea to have Linda and Don Quigley chime in on this.
In fact, you read my mind. Don, are you there?
Yes, I am.
You want to speak to this, please?
Yeah, Julie's been doing a good job of feeding me the things coming in from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I get most of my information from the Secretary of State's office, and they haven't chimed in yet. So we're still missing some pieces of information on all this. But it seems like the first thing we have to establish is that whether we're going to do a virtual deliberative session or an in-person deliberative session. We have the option of doing that. And a deliberative session is scheduled for January 30th, which is not far away.
Right. I just want to, we should probably not call it a virtual deliberative session because that's really not what's going to happen. It's a process that replaces the deliberative session and it takes place virtually, but there's no way to do an actual deliberative voting session. So HB 1129, instead of the deliberative session, we have 2 virtual information sessions. And again, as I understand it, those can take place in February.
I guess
So we have the option of setting those at a different time than the January 30th date?
That's my understanding, yes.
John, can I share something? I had a conversation with the superintendent. Just for the group's information, the school is going to be doing an in-person. They're not doing virtual. And what they're doing is they're having it at the high school in the auditorium. And then they're going to have an overflow room into the cafeteria. And then they're going to have the stage as a place, because you have to have a place if somebody refuses to wear a mask. And they're going to have video and audio set up for that. The superintendent offered that same facility to us if we want to use it. The municipal association says that you can have it out of town. You have to have special things you have to do, but the superintendent is offering us a space if we want to have it. We usually have it on Saturday. That does not conflict with their deliberative session or virtual deliberative session or whatever the session is called. So that's something we can explore too.
So Scott, what's the date of the school in-person deliberative session?
I don't know that off the top of my head, Don. And I checked with the superintendent. It's not on a Saturday. So we usually have ours on Saturday. So, but we can have it anytime we want as long as it's not on theirs.
Well, it sounds like an opportunity. What I was looking at is we are going through the warrant, what was super, what is very controversial. Obviously the controversial aspect will come with the operational budget. Most of the other warrants are fairly straightforward. They're usually replacing capital reserve funds or refunding certain funds at this point. So having it in-house, if you want to call it face-to-face situation, might not be so deliberating to begin with.
Yeah, but as you know, John, it's not necessarily, it could be that, we can spend $500,000 and spend 10 minutes on it and then sit there for 2 hours talking about $250.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I do
Depends on
understand.
what it is. So
I guess I'm at this point, I'm going to lean very heavily on Don and the, Linda at this point, because they're going to be carrying the weight of this thing with respect to this session. So I want to know how they feel at this point, what their recommendations are.
I would like to also have Karen Rossi, if she's still on, chime in as our health and safety officer in the town to see what her opinion might be on an in-person versus the information sessions.
Karen, go ahead.
My personal opinion, I would rather do it virtually.
Yeah.
I think our numbers are high. I'm personally not interested in hanging out in a building with people for any length of time, and I think it's more fair to the members of the public to do it virtually.
That's why I'm actually surprised the school board is moving towards in-face. I'm kind of surprised at that point.
Well, according to the superintendent, the auditorium is set up so you can have 6 feet and more in terms of different people that are there. And in terms of the overflow, that gives them extra space as well. They don't get as many people as we do, which is fortunate.
Yeah.
But that particular room's, I think he said 125 people in the auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would more than cover the people that usually show up with a 6 feet barrier. But then he also has the expansion into the cafeteria. So I don't know. The thing I don't like about virtual is that drive up voting. I just don't, that's going to be a nightmare.
But I spoke with Dave Scanlon this morning, and basically he said there's been discussions between the municipal, New Hampshire Municipal Association, the governor, the AG's office, and the Secretary of State's office. And what they're saying and what this guidance is in here, it basically is we can have the same type of election that we had. We can option to have people come in and vote, but we would have to have the function of, like we did before, that people can drive up and vote. Okay. So in essence, it's kind of the same as it was for the presidential.
Okay.
You're right. So people were coming to hand in their ballots that were the absentee ballots.
The only thing I like about that, Linda, is that we don't have to do it in March. We could possibly do it in April or May.
Are you saying, can we, or?
No, the document says that we can do it, what is it, March, April, or May? There's 3 different dates. Am I reading this wrong?
Yeah, I think you could vote to postpone the ballot session.
Because that's the part of the drive up. I'm just
Yeah.
worried about, people coming in March and it's a blizzard and,
And there's another surge going on. I see what you're saying.
yeah, so I don't know. I would want us to delay it as much as possible.
I'm just a little confused. How is the drive up part, like, how is the weather any different than a typical March?
Well, no. I'm talking about March 9th. We still get snowstorms. In April 13th and May 11th,
Right.
not too many snowstorms.
Right.
So that's my issue. Because somebody's going to have to be out there dealing with the drive ups. Ballots are going to get wet. How do you do it? Is it going to be in the transfer station? Transfer station is fine, in terms of rain and stuff, but snow's going to be blowing in March. That's my issue.
But again, it doesn't have to be specific only to drive up. It can be just like we did the presidential. The drive up is, people had the opportunity to,
Yeah.
but they also can come in to vote, just like they did at the presidential,
Okay.
which the majority of people did. I mean,
Yep.
But some people did do drive up. I know one particular woman that I handled, she didn't get out of her car.
Yeah. Yeah, and there possibly could, but it's not every single person that comes is going to be drive up. I don't think, if we open the polls like they were.
Well,
Linda, what's the status of absentee balloting for our town voting? Is absentee balloting going to be similar to what we did for the general election?
Yes, well, we always do the absentee ballots are available for the town meeting. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Well, yes. So that means we could have as many as 1,000 people voting absentee ballot at this.
Yep.
And does this also mean that the people who drive up, if somebody drives up to vote, they have to go through the application for an absentee ballot to do that? Or do they get a ballot just handed in the window like everybody else fills out inside?
No, I would say, Dave said it was like what we did before. So I would say it would have to be an absentee ballot.
So any drive-up person would have to go through the application process for an absentee ballot and then fill out a ballot, and then that all has to be turned in from their car.
I did not specifically ask him that, but that was the impression I got, in that it would be like the other, if we were open the polling. Yeah, I didn't ask that question. I can, but I didn't.
Well, it sounds like we need quite a bit more information before we make the call, but I think somebody said that the school a deliberative session was going to be on February the 2nd, I believe it was. So that's just some offhand information I got, but if we wanted to use the school for an in-person deliberative session with distancing and use the technology that they're going to use for the school meeting, is that something we could look into before we make the decision?
Yes.
Yes, I think we can look into it. I'm still leaning quite heavily towards the process where we don't meet face-to-face for deliberative session, but we should look into it. When do we have to make formal decision, Julie?
Well, again, the clock is ticking.
So the face of the schools we get for free. We just have to pay for the electronic equipment, the rental of it. So that the school is renting that equipment, so we'd have to have that expense as well. But I guess I'm with John as well. Ultimately it comes down to the town clerk and the moderator. You're the ones that are going to have to do this. So I can sit in my warm car and be happy, and you guys are out there doing whatever you need to do. So really, I'm supportive of whatever you guys think you can make work. So ultimately, that's where I am.
And that's how I sit too, but I'm
Well,
quite,
I have a question, Linda. So let's suppose we do the in-person deliberative session. Don't you still have to offer drive-up voting because of COVID?
Probably, yeah, I would
Yeah.
say yes.
Right, so I don't think we're getting away from the drive-up aspect if we do the deliberative in person. So if that's the hesitation, that's not going to make any difference.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point, is that, yes, it's going to be just like it was before.
The other part that I'm uncomfortable with the virtual, and I understand why you do that virtual, but you're really taking away from the legislative body the ability to amend articles. Because basically it all falls on the three selectmen. We can listen or not listen to people in terms of what they make in terms of suggestions. I think that takes away some of their rights, and I'm uncomfortable with that. So that's the only thing I don't really like about, the virtual, other than I don't want to be out there standing in a snowstorm taking people's ballots.
But that's not going to change.
Well, okay, then I'm not volunteering to get ballots out in the snowstorm then.
That ballot session is going to happen regardless,
Okay.
the
That's
way
right.
it has to happen.
And I think, not to interrupt, but I think you're limiting people from going to the deliberative session if you don't do it virtually, because I know a handful of older people who would go to deliberative session, but they're not going to go now because they're not safe. And remember, Durham, if we do it in Durham's got high numbers.
Okay.
yeah, I'm leaning quite heavily towards the virtual.
In addition, if you are going to go to an in-person deliberative, which I don't recommend either, I would recommend that you seriously reduce the number of staff people that you have show up.
Mhm.
Because Karen knows what I'm talking about. You could find yourself in a situation where you have the deliberative session, you find out somebody tests positive, and now all of your department heads are quarantined.
So what's the plan
Agreed.
going forward then?
Well, to trigger the deliberative session is required that according to the paperwork, I'm seeing that the moderator declares an emergency and declares the voting to be unsafe in the facility that we have. And so if everyone on the panel here, and what Linda, what's your opinion on this? Virtual or in person?
The virtual, I think the virtual.
Well, it
I
sounds
really
like everybody.
don't think over the years, over these past few years since we've had the SB2, very, very few people are coming. Every year it's smaller and smaller, and less people. Yes, there are some amendments, but nothing significant. It just, I say virtual.
All right, well then I hereby declare that there's an emergency and that our facility is not going to be safe for in-person deliberative session, and that we will go for the HB 1129 option for the information session.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Don.
Does that facilitate the RSA? So is that official? Is there
Yes.
no form he has to fill out?
No, he just has
So that's
to,
good?
he just has to make a determination.
All right, excellent.
So
Now-
Linda, can you find out definitively whether we can get the voter registration list in a format that could be sent to a printer to do mailers?
Yes, I'm almost positive that the answer is yes, but yes.
Okay, and then
The
we
answer
have
is
to,
yes.
we
The
have
answer is
to
yes.
come up with a design and the wording. So I guess I'll work on that with Linda. And then we have to set the dates. I just want to confirm with NHMA or the Secretary of State or whomever it is that we can. I was originally told by the attorneys at NHMA that we can do the virtual sessions in February.
That would be good.
Well, it'd be handy to move it back a week or two, that's for sure.
Right. Well, we kind of would need to, yeah, to get the mailer out and make sure everybody gets it in hand and,
Julie, can you check on your, because I assume you're going to use the town's Zoom license, because right now it's limited to 100. Can you check and see what the cost would be to even temporarily increase it?
do we think we're gonna get more than 100 people?
I do not want to be the one that says to the 101st person, sorry, you cannot attend.
Yeah, I can look into that. Yep.
It can't be that much more expensive, I wouldn't think, but can you check that, please?
Yep.
Good call. Anything else on this piece? Okay, Julie, move on.
Okay. The reval, which I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't put up here. So, I spoke to another town administrator who worked with CCAG, actually in a couple of towns, and he didn't really express any reservations as to why we wouldn't go with them, and they are the low bidder. So I guess at this point, my recommendation would be to contract with CCAG to do the 2021 reval.
Could you put up that spreadsheet you had from the last meeting, please?
Yeah, it might take me a minute, but yes.
Well, we could ask John to sing while you're doing that.
Well, my concern is,
Oh, no.
unfortunately, because I didn't think to do that. Well, let me try. Yeah, let me try this.
You're talking about John Tappan, right?
No, I was talking about you. You're the only one that sings in this group.
There is no click here. I can't.
I can sing if you want, Todd.
But there we go.
Well, anybody's better than John, I think, so go ahead.
Okay, let me pause that.
It's nice to have such a happy group.
Boy, let me. I was too focused on the budget hearing.
Yeah, we got that under control now.
Well, all right. Let's see if I can make this happen.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I wanted you to sing, John, because that would make her go even quicker.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's this file. Open desktop. All right, I think I got it. All right.
There it is.
Good.
So yeah, so CCAG is $39,000.
And can you refresh my memory? There's some things, if you scroll down, that they're not doing. There's, yeah, okay.
We have to print the copies of all the final assessing cards,
Okay.
which I don't know how big of a burden that's going to be. I don't think it's much of a burden.
Okay.
And then they are not able to obtain a bond, but they're willing to let us withhold 35%, which is better than a bond because
Yep.
it's easier to get our money if there's a problem. So
And what's this additional fee of $30 per property shall be assessed? What is that?
right. So their quote of 39,000 is based on there being 2,176 parcels.
So if somebody
So if
does
it
a lot
somehow
line,
ends up being more than that, they'll only accept a 1% overage. After that, it's $30 per
oh,
car.
I see. Okay.
But there's a $10,000 price difference.
Yep.
So
I think you're fine.
Unless we annex Durham,
No.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. So.
You okay on this?
I'm okay.
Good. What about the update on the leased office space?
The signs, I believe we've received the signs and they need to be installed. The mailbox still needs to be moved. Karen, do you know what the status is of the ramps?
I do not. I asked him today. They said they'd be done for Tuesday, but
Okay.
I asked him today and I did not get a reply.
Okay. So, we're still moving forward. I think I could use the words most of town hall is packed up.
Mm-hmm.
There are still some things that need to be done. I mean, because imagine we have to pack everything up, but we still have to work there. So you kind of want to find that fine balance where you don't want to be scrambling on the morning the movers show up. The shredder is coming on the 31st. So we've been moving boxes of documents that need to be shredded out to the hobo shed, just to make it easier for when the truck arrives. So.
And
but
the
it's
target date is still the 5th?
January 5th.
It's coming close.
Yeah, we're getting there.
All right.
You all, oh, well, John didn't, but Mr. Bugby and Mr. Brown saw the building. They were given the grand tour.
Yep, pretty nice.
So,
That's all I need to hear. Pretty nice.
yeah.
Yep. Well, the word I would use is palatial, John. Very palatial.
Yeah.
Oh, that's even better.
Mr. Chairperson, I'll give you a point of order on 4B. I believe we have to vote on that, I think.
You need to vote on you need to vote to take the money out of the reval
Yes.
capital reserve fund. Yep.
So I move to take the money on the reval valuation reserve fund in the amount of, tell me,
Not to exceed 39,000.
$39,000.
Can we bump it up just a little bit in case we have properties over? I'd rather give you a little bit of room.
Sure. I mean, there's lots of time for me to come back to the board.
Okay, never mind then.
Yep.
Never mind.
$39,000. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Discussion on the motion?
not for me.
Mr. Bugby, your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Brown, your vote?
Yes.
Ms. LaCourse? Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
What else?
And I think that's everything without getting into too many details. We're working through some employee quarantine situations.
Mm-hmm.
Thus far, that I am aware of, no employees have COVID. And we're trying to keep it that way. So,
Keep our fingers crossed, that's for sure.
so I think that's everything.
Okay. Anything on the consent agenda that should be pulled off?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Hearing nothing, I move to accept the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
not for me.
Hearing none. Mr. Brown, your vote?
I'm sorry. What is the question?
The consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Do you approve? Yes or no?
Yep. Okay.
Mr. Bugby?
Yes.
Ms. LaCourse, yes. Consent agenda has been approved. Any miscellaneous unfinished business?
The only thing which I neglected to say under number 3 is we're meeting with, I think John Tappan mentioned it, we're meeting with WME tomorrow and talking about their proposal. There's a few things that we want to include in there, have them include in their particular services. So our intention is to come back to you on January 11th with a proposal from them to engage them to help us with doing the building drawings and also to do an amendment to the assessment. There's certain things we found that should be included and so that LCHIP will pay for those, or at least potentially up to 50% of those particular things. So just to let the board be aware that we'll be back on the 11th to request engaging that particular company. So,
Okay, thank you on that. Is there anything else? If not, I move to enter into a non-public session, New Hampshire RSA 91-A:3, number 2A. It requires a second.
second,
All right, I'm not hearing any formal discussion. The roll call vote, Mr. Bugby,
yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. LaCourse, yes. We will move into, is everybody at this point?
All right.
Actually, nothing was really discussed in non-public, to put it plainly. So there's nothing to report. But we did have, you want to bring that up, Scott, with respect to job descriptions?
Yeah, it's kind of something that Julie, you talked to us about in terms of job descriptions when we asked for them.
Yeah.
So can we task, and you probably already have it on your list, but you and Steve work on revising the job description for the public works manager
Yep.
to incorporate those two things. The other thing we need is we need another non-public session on the 11th.
Okay.
Yes, we
The
do.
11th is going to be very busy because we got the racetrack plus another budget hearing, plus you're going to hear from the THRC again. It's going to be busy.
And we want to do department head evaluations at that point and bring them in one by one.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have a setup on that.
All right.
Otherwise, was there anything else that we had? I think we're okay. We talked about the
No.
virtual.
I do have one thing. It's really number 6, if you allow me to go back to 6, John.
Mm-hmm.
Can we hear from Denise? We put out a solicitation for Volunteer of the Year awards. Did we get any back, Denise?
She's not there.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
think we came back into this session. I haven't heard that she's heard from anybody, but
Okay.
I've been focused on the move, so.
Okay, is that something that you can speak to her about, or?
Yep.
is
Yeah, I
she-
don't want to forget about it just because we're in COVID times.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay,
Happy New Year to everybody.
yeah, anything else? We
Yeah.
done?
Done.
So
Okay, I
the
move-
minutes, you're not sealing the minutes, is that correct?
Well, you weren't there to fill out the form, Julie, so there's
Yeah,
no,
there's nothing to
Right,
say.
but I mean, you did meet in non-public, so,
Mhm.
well, basically what we did is we discussed department head evaluations and we discussed the salary increase pool. No
Yep.
decisions were made. And so that was the extent of our discussion.
Mhm.
okay.
That was it. Okay, I
Right.
move to adjourn.
Second,
Any discussion? No.
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 All in favor? Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Good night. Thank you
night,
so much.
everybody.